Good morning, Ergo Flex family. I'm Dr. Robbie Wyatt, Chief Clinical Officer for Ergo Flex Technologies, home of the Back On Trac, Knee On Trac, and the Total Brain and Body O2. And the Total Brain and Body O2 is what I want to talk about. And I really want to thank Kylie Wong, who came on the show, Chiropractic Instrument Success, about 2 weeks ago. And he was instrumental on turning me on to two very, very good books. The Oxygen Advantage by Dr. Patrick McEwen, and then Anti-Inflammatory Oxygen by Dr. Mark Circus. I went through Oxygen Advantage. I'm about halfway through Anti-Inflammatory Oxygen. Patrick McEwen has some very interesting concepts on breathing, and more specifically, how to breathe correctly and how breathing through your nose is critical for proper oxygenation in the system. He also has a pretty interesting oxygen level test that gives you some good information about your patients and just how conditioned they are. It's called the BOLT test, and it's the body oxygen level test. It's very simple. Basically, take a normal breath through your nose, normal breath, exhale, and then you hold that breath until you have a medium level of need for air and breathe normally back through your nose and out. Now, you count seconds during that. So that BOLT score gives you very clear indications of where somebody's sensitivity to CO2 is. Which is interesting because CO2 is a big deciding factor on how much oxygen we can get into the cells through perfusion. It's not the only aspect, but it's a big aspect. Okay, and most of us are mouth breathers, especially if we have stuffy noses and it's a Western lifestyle with inflammatory foods and so on and so forth. We tend to breathe through our nose more. So that BOLT score, mine when I first did it was 8, which is bad. Anything below 10 is not good, but I knew mine was going to be bad because I'm a horrible snorer because of the things that I have going on. And then I also have some other aspects. I broke my nose when I was 18, so the whole right side of my nose doesn't move very much air. But it's very important that we breathe properly, and specifically when we're using Total Brain and Body O2 so that we can perfuse correctly, oxygenate, ventilate, and perfuse correctly. So that BOLT score is a simple way for you to get a baseline on how well your patient's doing. Mine, just in 2 weeks, has increased to above 20. That's 20 seconds on that BOLT. Okay, so hold my breath for 20 seconds. That's pretty much normal for somebody who has mild exercise tolerance. Okay. Now, high-level athletes are 40, and then free divers are even much bigger than that. So it's pretty interesting as to what we can do just by teaching our patients how to actually breathe normally, and then help them oxygenate better. Now, when it comes to the Total Brain and Body O2, when I was first introduced to this piece of equipment, my thought process is that the concentrated oxygen was really the most important part. It's a critical part, but what I'm coming to understand about how partial pressures work and how we exchange O2 for CO2, how those create ions and potassium channel pumps, and how we perfuse correctly and ventilate correctly, starting to understand that it's actually the depleted oxygen state that's really the most critical. So I want you to think of it like this. With Total Brain and Body O2, we can bring the mountain directly to the patient. We do not have to take them to 15,000 feet above sea level, actually taking them to the top of the mountain. Okay, we can bring the mountain to them. And we can do that in depleted oxygen state. So we can take our patients into that depleted oxygen state and actually take them upwards of 15,000 feet, which means they're working in a depleted oxygen state, which means they become less sensitive to CO2. So we're actually changing the pressure. That pressure inside the system, which is a normal thing because of what's happening because of the low O2 exchange, creates a pressure gradient difference that allows us to put them in that state. Okay, so if they exercise, they have intense activity exercise during depleted oxygen, that creates a need for more oxygen. So what happens is when total brain and body O2, either in a time mechanism or based on heart rate, switches you back into concentrated oxygen, the body now perfuses at a very high rate. What I'm seeing with our alpha docs is that your SpO2 basically doesn't need to be going below 80%. If you're below 80% for 15, 20 seconds, you're probably going to pass out, okay? Unless you just really, really tolerate it. Most patients get down into the 88, 87, 86, 85% SpO2, okay? And that's the pulse oximeter. And that's the saturation pulse ox, okay? So that's how much O2 is actually in the arterial blood. Now what happens is when it switches into concentrated oxygen, you go from the low 80s all the way up to 100%, typically in 30 to 40 seconds, all right? So you're completely oxygenated at the time. Think about that. 30 to 40 seconds to completely recover to 99 to 100% SpO2. That's O2 percentage saturation in the arterial blood. 30 to 40 seconds. That's pretty amazing stuff. And then that changes how the body actually perfuses and ventilates, which specifically removes hypoxia, okay? That hypoxic state. And there's so much information to talk about here, but the point is that if you change the way you're actually using the total brain and body O2 to where you do burst exercise or very intense exercise at patient tolerance while they're in a depleted oxygen state, actually helps them perfuse and ventilate better, which means they're using normal atmospheric O2 at a much higher rate. Okay, so again, tips and trips. So normal atmospheric oxygen levels is right at about 21% O2 saturation. When we put them in the concentrated state, we're anywhere from 85 to 90%, depending on how long the concentrator's been running. And then we can take them as low as 11 to 12% in depleted oxygen states. So that shift from depleted oxygen to concentrated allows the body to actually ventilate and perfuse at a much improved rate, which immediately changes the effects of hypoxia in the system. Now you can look at what hypoxia basically has an effect on, which is pretty much every system in the body. Okay, we can go 3 days without water. We can only go 4 or 5 minutes without oxygen. Okay, so very, very powerful. So highly recommend that you take a look at these two books, The Oxygen Advantage, okay, and Anti-Inflammatory Oxygen Therapy. Excellent concepts, and I'm going to bring more specifics about how the body actually perfuses O2 and CO2. And don't miss out on our Secrets to $1 Million Successful Practice coming up in March of 2019. I'm going to go into some very in-depth concepts about why and how total brain and body O2 works. So please post on Ergo Flex Technologies Facebook page and the Chiropractic Instruments of Success page. If you have any questions, I'd love to talk more about this and get your opinions. Of course, if you need to talk to me directly, you can either call here and or email me at dr.wyatt@backontrac.com. All right, guys, hope this was informative. I know it's been a long journey for me trying to figure out exactly what we can do with total brain and body O2 to help our patients heal up much, much faster. So keep taking care of all those people feet.